now at a $7,800 price point. And we are getting sales where they don't even get on a sales call because of the private podcast. Like, that's how good the opportunity is for them to get to know our content.
Welcome back to another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast. So excited that we have Colleen Kachmann here. She is an intuitive drinking coach and founder of Emotional Sobriety Coaching. Colleen, welcome. I'm so excited. I'm actually so excited to dive into the results you've had from private podcasts. But before we jump in, I would love if you would just take a moment and tell our listeners a little bit more about you and maybe your business model, just to kind of set the stage so that they understand kind of a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah. So I have founded it's a high ticket coaching program for high achieving professional women, primarily entrepreneurs, executives, licensed clinical professionals who are drinking too much and are looking for an alternative approach to the typical all or nothing, you need to get sober. And so I help women reduce their alcohol consumption by 80%. Using my unique method of emotional sobriety, which is basically just a combination of neuroscience, cognitive reframing, a little bit of spirituality. But the program is a 1-year program. It's very high touch. We have lots of different types of group calls. I have 1,500 hours of secret podcasts, one of which goes with a 300-page workbook. Yeah.
That might be the most. I've never heard anyone quantify by hours of, I've heard feeds.
Yeah.
Right.
That was like 6 months ago too. I mean, I'm adding, because all of our call replays are recorded.
Yep.
So that right there. And then I'm just always like, I have a daily podcast. It's Coffee with Colleen. And then all the content that I'm always adding to. So it's a lot, but I am never shocked anymore by how my clients are so much more into it. I switched to private podcast feeds about a year ago. I was making no money. I couldn't sell water to a dying rich man in the desert. Like, I was upside down. It was not going well. And it was on this podcast here I was listening to, and one of your guests said, this is how you build a cult following. You got to get in their ears.
Who said that?
I don't remember, but we could go back in the dates. Somebody said this is how you got to get in their ears. And I already had a podcast and I got good feedback from that. I didn't break the internet with it, but I knew that people who listened to my podcast, they just needed more of that. And so fast forward, I basically was upside down for Q1 of 2023. I had a $40,000 loss. I've cleared $1 million since then.
Whoa.
I'm now generating, about 150 grand a month with a high ticket sales program that is like butter on bread. Because of the private podcast feed, we qualify people. Like, they don't just book a call and get on with, now I have 2 people on my sales team as well as me, but they have to listen to the private podcast feed. And then I fully disclose what the program costs, the finance options, the framework, the structure, so that when they actually get to the call, they're there to buy. Otherwise, they cancel. And so it has transformed the high ticket sales. Both of my gals had no experience in sales before. They're like, I'll give it a go. But the podcast actually sells for them. I go over a lot of objections from time and finances. Whenever I come up with a new idea, I just pop it in the feed and it updates. And it's absolutely amazing. That's what I have to say. Yes.
That's it. That's the end of the show, everybody. Thank you.
I feel like that was a mic drop.
End of all case studies ever. No, that was a lot. And even some she hid from us. We didn't, Nora and I talked to her. Her intake form had some of that, but some of that was not mentioned. Okay. Yeah. Where do we go from here, Nora?
So let's talk about how you're specifically using private podcasts, because I know, and I want to talk a little bit about what you were doing before. So what was that transition? Like, what was that shift that helped you move from maybe being in a state where you're taking losses to the point where now you're generating a really, healthy monthly income? So I'm curious what that shift was and the role that private podcasts helped play in that.
Well, I would say they were one of 2 factors, and the bottom line word is friction. I was running webinars every single week that people had to come on time, show up, listen to the whole thing and be there. And that is such not the way the world works anymore. And so I didn't have the numbers, I would need to get hundreds of people registered just to get 20 people to show up, just to get 5 people to still be on the call. There was so much friction. And then because the nature of my program, maybe everybody feels like this, but there's a lot they need to know about why they're struggling before we can even begin for them to see what the solution is. Because typically with alcohol use disorder, well, no, duh, just quit drinking, and I have a completely different approach. It's a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. And we need to go in and rewire your mind. It doesn't happen overnight. So there was a lot of friction to get people even interested in my program. And if they didn't attend live, then they had to watch on video on a computer screen sitting at a desk, 2 hours worth of information. And it was just really hard to consume. And so I think the friction in the funnel was primarily why people weren't completing it, because they had to book the time for the webinar. Then they had to show up. Then they had to watch the replay. Then they had to book a call. Like, there was so much. And now it's like the private podcast is immediately available. And even there's sometimes tech issues with it. People who have never done private podcasts don't always know, like, they'll get it hooked up, but they can't find it. And so now we have a 15-minute tech call, so that if we see that they were invited, but they didn't subscribe, we'll follow up. Do you want to get on the phone? And just provide that high touch, customized support, help them get it set up. And it also is a great talking point, were you able to listen to the episodes? And we can see if they did or if they didn't. And so it just took all the friction out of the funnel because it's immediately available. I'm dealing with drinkers who have moments of clarity where I need to do something and this is what I want to do. And then the window shuts on that. And if there's too much friction, they have too many actions to take, too much time lapses, then you just can't catch them. They do laps around the cul-de-sac of stupidity. You got to wait for them to circle back. And with the private podcast, they're able to put me in their ear and kind of fall in love with my idea, my approach. They know who I am. They get on the call and they think they know me. Like, it is such an intimate communication medium that is not at all like watching a webinar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was going to say that piece you said about the tech. So you're hitting a couple things of common questions of our users. One is like the whole purpose of this episode, which is, can I sell high ticket from a private podcast? So you're nailing that. Thank you. But then you just hit this other one of like, there can be friction with podcast players. There are little tech hiccups that can happen along the way as we are moving, RSS feeds into different players and they all act differently. We feel the pain there. But I love that you've created a 15-minute tech call. And I want to say this too, because what you said too is that customer service is so important. And this is before they've bought. So here's somebody who is just trying to get the information. They, having you connect or someone on your team connect with them to help them. But then you see that as a touch point, not as this, oh man, I have to get on the call and help someone figure out why Apple's not working or whatever. You're like, this is a perfect moment where they can see like my values, like what we care about, like how we would take care of our members. And so I just want to point that out there to everyone listening. Sure, can you do a tech call for every lead magnet? Maybe not. But when you have the numbers you have where that conversion rates lead to like a $6,500 sale, that's enough for me to get on the phone with somebody or create some system of helping them through the funnel. And I think I just want to highlight that because it's not, I don't want to say it's unheard of, but it's something people don't think of because they're like, oh, well, it's a lead magnet. Like, I only want the people who are going to figure it out. It is just, maybe. But that also could be a little bit of an excuse, right?
Because if you've never done a private podcast, you don't understand
it
what
is different. You don't understand what's happening.
And I'll tell you, I'm now at a $7,800 price point. Okay. And we are getting sales where they don't even get on a sales call because of the private podcast. That's how good the opportunity is for them to get to know.
Like you're doing a painkiller. I also like pointing that out. This is a good fit of like I am solving a problem that people have dealt with potentially their entire lives that is having an impact on their family. And here's this person with your fun personality, your amazing content, like the way you see it is not shaming, right? Yeah. And there's explanations for why I feel like this. I'm not a bad person. Right. And then, I mean, I could see how this is perfect of getting to know you as the person to solve the problem. This is like the quintessential example of that. And it is best communicated, like you said, through a private podcast where someone's like, this is what I've been waiting for. And you're basically creating that aha moment that there isn't a hesitation. Like, this is a $7,800 problem. This is a infinite dollar problem for many people, right? Like, it could be any number really for a certain population. And so I just want to point that out too, because we get that as well, a question of messaging, like, what do we put in the private podcast? And you know, all this stuff works together. There's like your personality, your framework, and how you teach it. The delivery method is important. I definitely agree. But, you know, are you solving a problem? Is it clear what that problem is? Like, we go through all of that. And so I love that you're kind of laying it out there. And if you have all this in place, this is what can happen. So I have a question about the people booking directly. Do you just basically say, hey, if you want to jump on a call to talk about it, cool. If not, like, here's a link. Is that like how you talk about it in the podcast?
It's kind of, the funnel goes two ways. So I have different calls to action. Sometimes it's book a call, and once they book the call, then they get a link to the pre-call audio.
Okay.
The pre-call audio just happens to be my private podcast on how to reduce your drinking by 80%. And so sometimes my call to action is get my private podcast, which of course appeals to my audience because it feels very anonymous, very private. So they can come in both ways. So the feed is set up to ultimately get people ready for the call. But if they haven't booked a call, then it's designed to pull them into booking a call.
Okay.
So it's kind of a two-way street there.
I love that. So the content is generally the same, but like wherever they are in the customer journey of what they need, right? I need to talk to somebody, or, you know, like, how did you say you sometimes offer it without the call?
I offer it both ways. So like on TikTok, you can book a call. Like that platform. That's what we do there.
Like
on Instagram,
social media,
comment podcasts, and I'll send you a link to the private podcast.
So you're double using it as a lead magnet and also a warm up for someone who's booked a call. I love that because we have people who've used it, A, as a lead magnet, but B, as one-on-one service providers, as sales calls. Some people create separate feeds for that. But what you're basically saying is most of these people need information and like an understanding about what's happening in their brain. And so then the call is just like solidifying how the program works and all of that.
The first half of the feed, I talk about the root cause of alcohol use disorder, the biology of addiction, you know, how to know if you have it. And then as you move through the feed, it's more about the program, objections, overcoming objections, all of those little nuances. So there's 12 episodes in there, but that to me also provides a lot of value as opposed to separating it out, because especially if somebody's not your client, giving them multiple private podcast feeds, they get confused. They get confused on the fact that my private podcast and my public podcast are two different things. We had to change the pictures because people were like, you want me to listen to 200 episodes? And I'm like, okay, you got the wrong podcast. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I just want to say that the private podcast as a prerequisite to get on the sales call also allows us to really put a litmus test in there, because if somebody gets on a sales call and hasn't listened to that, they're not listening, and they probably aren't going to be a good fit for my program. So a lot of times, 15 minutes in, of course, I'm very nice and cordial, but I'm like, I'm not going to take your money if you're not able to listen to a podcast, because that's the format for the program. You're going to have to get used to listening to podcasts. And so it's also nice because with my clients, it's so overwhelming. There's so many things to change. Do I need to get a divorce and get a different job? And then I got to figure, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you need to learn how to set the private podcast feed up today. That's what we're doing today. And then you need to listen to that. And it's like one step at a time. So the podcast is it's really nice because it's like, you don't have to figure everything out. Just book this call with my tech guy. We'll get you set up and you can start listening. And then the people who don't listen or aren't going to listen, weed themselves out. It's really quite brilliant.
Yeah. I will add one thing because, I mean, this is so critical from a pre-framing the sales call perspective, and it makes that sales call. And do I remember correctly that you said that the private podcast doubled your close rate? Was that a stat that I think I read?
Well, I don't know how you double something that was zero.
Oh, okay. Fair. All right. Yeah.
I was doing like 1 or 2 clients a month. And now, we've got about a 40% close rate among 3 people to an experienced sales team for a $7,800 program. We have a 40% close rate.
That's huge. And the pre-framing, I think, does speak volumes because when they get on the call, like you said, they're ready. They've already been pre-framed. One thing, this was back in the day when we didn't have private podcasts. We weren't using private podcasts to pre-frame, but we required kind of similar, like a prerequisite. It was instead of pre-call audio, it was just a pre-call, almost like a homework kind of a thing before they got on the call. And we would have our high-ticket sales people text people and say, hey, did you check it out? Did you go through it? And if they said no, we would reschedule the call. And that was and we got to that point because of what we learned. And that was exactly this, is that if they consume that content, and with audio, it makes it a ton easier to have people consume it because now we're unlocking all those hours of the day where they have availability to consume content, that the conversion rates were so much higher and the quality of our clients were so much higher that we started implementing that because it was that important. And I think with audio, it just makes it that much easier. So I love that you used that vehicle to be able to address and pre-frame and educate and shift beliefs and do everything that you need to do to make them most likely to invest on that sales call when they get on.
And it goes beyond that because we also put the same care and attention into our onboarding process.
Oh, yes.
When they purchase on a call or when they purchase, they get a first 7-day feed. Like my program is big. You're getting a 300-page workbook. There's accountability groups. There's connection groups. There's group calls. Like there's a lot. Just listen to your first 7-day feed. We also have a support feed that is message to partners so that people can share our approach with their partners that might address the partner who wants them to get completely sober versus the partner who doesn't think this is a good investment. We have a guarantee on the program. So we create all these other little feeds for special reasons. We also do customized content in the program. So let's say somebody comes in and they have a lot of trauma or they identify anxiety as their issue. We can pull the content out of the main feeds and do a customized feed just for them based on what they need, and even record one-on-one sessions for them and stick those in there. So it really allows a level of customization that I don't know how you would provide anywhere else, especially when you're dealing with 1,500 hours of content. Like there's got to be a way to filter that. And the private feeds allow us to do that so easily. And then every time we do it for one person, we've got a library now of anxiety and trauma and, all these other modalities.
Like topics.
Yeah. And then they're ready to go and we can add to them as we create new content.
Oh, that's so good. So you're bringing up, Nora, do you remember the health coach who had all these different topics? And we told her, you should put all the different things that you teach so you can hand them to people. Because health coaching is a very customized thing too, right? Like people have different issues. And then Erin Lindstrom, one of our early podcast guests, talked about you should just put all your content that you have into Hello Audio, and who knows what person needs what call or mini course or whatever, and she does a lot of like one-on-one work. So you're bringing this high touch program and you're able to, because 1,500 hours of content, you're able to reuse that content in a way that can help individual people. And our platform allows you to copy to a feed, right? If you were doing this in like literally any learning other management system, no one would touch that with a 10-foot pole, because what is more worse than going into Kajabi, like setting up a lesson, uploading a video, creating a title, giving access, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and it's like giving me hives thinking about it. Like no one wants to touch that stuff.
We also use AI, like we'll take our group calls and pull the transcript and then use AI. We're training the AI to pull out like our top keywords, our modalities that we teach, all the little delay, don't deny, or, drinking at mother-in-law's, and we pull them out and tag them in Hello Audio. So then in the different podcast players, some of them are better than others, but you can actually search for the topics that you're looking for. And so I'm really excited about like the future.
Oh yeah, search is kind of new in the podcasting space with like transcripts and stuff. That's a really cool use case.
Yeah. And it's not perfect yet, but we're learning and very excited because that just makes, like I used to tell my now ex-husband, it's like he was a little bit of a hoarder. Well, he just had a lot of stuff. He wasn't technically a hoarder, but I used to be like, if you don't know you have it, you don't have it. You know, it's like you just go to the store and buy new stuff because there's so much shit in this closet that you don't even know you have it. And it's the same way with all this content. Like if we don't know we have it, then people can't use it. And so that's, I think, the next frontier, at least in my business, of how to use AI to label and sort and all of that for people to search.
That's just so cool.
Over here.
I know.
Okay. Good.
I think your first 7-day feed was also something that I want to highlight for a lot of listeners because we've talked a lot about in different episodes of onboarding. I know we have everything from employee onboarding, like dusting off that whatever employee handbook that we used to use in corporate and now using audio onboarding and having it be more personal and onboarding into a coaching program, onboarding into a high touch, high ticket. That is a really different experience. And I think when you have someone, especially in this case where they're coming in with a lot of trust, they're being vulnerable, they're motivated, they're excited for, what's to come, maybe a little afraid because maybe you don't know what's happening. And I think that is such a great, easy way to get someone in motion. Whereas, Lindsay, you and I were talking the other day about people who log in to like these LMS and like, you've got to get someone that first time because that might literally be the only time that they log in. And I think there's something to be said about creating that low pressure starting point that helps even create more momentum for them to continue, which I think is a really, really great idea.
We even have a restart fee because what my clients think they're joining
is what? Wait, were you in education in any world before? Because
they think they're joining to change their drinking. What they're really joining is to learn how to stop quitting. So we really normalize, especially in the onboarding process, we normalize that there's 100% chance that you're going to feel like you're failing, you wasted your money, that you are going to give up and you will give up and it's going to be 2 weeks. Are you done? You're ready to come back? So we have a complete re-onboarding feed with the restart feed. And so that we just normalize it. And there's tools for that. It's not a problem. You're just at the part where it's still hard and you're not there. And welcome. That's what we're doing. I feel like, especially with women with alcohol use disorder, it's like, it's the analogy where the pot of gold is 6 foot down or the treasure's buried and they can dig 5.5 feet almost there. And then they give up and go start digging in a different hole. It's like, nope, we're going to keep you in line and on track to get all the way down so that you truly experience the transformation. Yeah.
Oh my God. My heart is like, so I used to teach college and I came into this whole like digital marketing space, helping people be better teachers. And I used to have a whole module on building in the safety nets into your program. And for those of you listening who've taken a course and maybe it was a live course and it had 5 modules or 6 or 7 modules and it was 10 or 12 weeks and they built in implementation weeks, right? There was this whole like structure that everyone pretended was not, I don't know, unique or whatever. But I would say there's a module I would be like, module 3 is usually the like meat of any program. There's an intro, there's a whatever. And guess what? That's the week that people are like, I can't. And how weird, right? And so I was like, what if you just talked about it in your live program and said, hey, guess what, everybody? We're in the week where everyone pretends that this isn't going to work. And people were just like, I never thought about it. I used to do that in my college classroom. October was always the hardest month in fall because there's no breaks, there's no whatever. Now like schools have some fall breaks or whatever, but I used to be like, October sucks because we're so close to Thanksgiving. And then like once Thanksgiving happens, I mean, it's basically finals and then we basically have a bunch of weeks off, right? So I just like announced that, and that's where we're at, guys. Like, isn't that interesting? And your grades are kind of real, right? Like and so anywho, I think what you're bringing up, like that I want everyone to listen from a like course design perspective. This is just human psychology. This is how our brains work to protect us when we're doing something hard. And I bet I'm just like, oh, this is why your stuff converts so well, is because like you really understand this. And a lot of our users, because Nora and I tend to attract people that are like experts and know what they're talking about, and they struggle with the marketing piece and they struggle like, demonstrating that. And I just like, I don't know who needs to hear this. Somebody does, but lean into that expertise, because there is somebody out there who's waiting for you as the teacher, who's finally going to do this different thing. And if you lean in to that, that person is going to be able to like transform a certain group of people. And like using something like private podcasts can kind of melt away some of all that friction, not only just from what you were talking about, your students, your clients, but like the friction for us as the creator, the teacher, the coach, you know what I mean? And so anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but I love when I see people that like get, I don't know, motivation, like external motivation, intrinsic motivation, like all those things, and are moving people through content because they have to learn the stuff first. They can't just like one day snap out of it. So anyways, my rant is over.
Yeah. The third day of my first 7-day feed is, oh shit, what did I just do? Can I quit? Totally. That's literally the title. Am I allowed to quit? Here's our refund policy. Like, this is how that works. Yeah.
Perfect.
And I have to say, just somebody needs to hear this. The business I have that is so successful is because I was willing to go through the scaries. I was a sober coach teaching sobriety as it was taught to me. And I just had the balls to listen to my clients who were telling me, but I don't want to completely quit drinking. And I drank this weekend and it was fine. Now what you got for me? I listened to them. I responded to the problems instead of trying to think the solution that I thought they needed. Like when you let your clients tell you what you need and you respond to those needs, you are co-creating a solution. And here I am, the only one in the whole world at this point that is teaching people intuitive drinking. Like what? Yeah, we all learned to drink in a frat house. Go, 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 and no, you got to learn to drink like a grown up. So like we have a whole mindful drinking course where you drink and feel so that it's not like, oh, I'm having 2 drinks and twice a week. No, like how does it feel in your body? What's the line between buzzed and intoxicated? And like I have created all this because I stopped thinking I knew what my clients needed. And I started listening and allowing them to give me their problems. And then I just go to my workshop and I tinker around. I'm like, let's try this. And then based on how that works, like, I'm so done going in my bat cave, creating courses and then, releasing them to the world. Here you go. This is a work in progress and we're always adding and taking things out. And that's the beauty of the Hello Audio podcast is that I can constantly change a file. Like Stacy will call and be like, I think this is like 2 years old. You're talking about sobriety. I'm like, get it out. And then we just replace it and nobody even knows the difference. It's amazing. Yeah.
I love this so much. There's so much about this that I love. I'm curious from your creation process, do you find, because I know for Lindsay and myself, like I know we're biased, but we love creating audio content because we don't have to worry about what we look like. We don't have to do hair and makeup. We don't have to worry about video editing, which I personally think is horrible. I'm not a fan. But I'm curious because you've created 1,500 plus hours because you've added more since then. That's a ton of content. And I'm wondering how you feel now about your ability to create content that might be audio only compared to maybe how you've done like the webinars or things like that. And do you notice, I guess, a difference in your workflow and your speed and your ability to get stuff created and also how you feel? I'm curious about that too.
So I have a daily podcast and I don't do it every day, but the goal is 365 episodes, right? So I'm on about 120. I do a couple a week. There is nothing that I look more forward to. It's called Coffee with Colleen. And it's just me talking about me. My happy hangover story was last week. I'm just talking about my life and I just hit record. It's like having a conversation with somebody. And I do it in GarageBand so I can start and stop if I get in the weeds or say something dumb. It is the easiest thing in the world versus, this stuff that I do where I have to record a video podcast for YouTube and stuff like that is very stressful to me. I could sit down and record Hello Audio content all day long. You ask me a question, I just sit down and answer it. I pop it in the feed. We have a whole Q&A feed. That's one thing we do where we take the call replays and then we separate them out using AI into different hot seats. So that's one topic, one title. And then we have a whole other feed that's just called Q&A feed so that they can search by the topics. And I often will just record an answer to a question, or I'll get off a group call and want to follow up. And I'll just talk into the microphone, pop it into that Q&A feed. And it's fun. It's energizing. I could do more, not less. It does not drain me. It doesn't suck me. Audio only content is my favorite to consume also because you can move around your life. I follow some people on YouTube and I so prefer the podcast medium because I'm not tied to my desk or looking at my phone.
So true. It's important also. I think if you have a course you're an expert-based business, you're creating digital assets for whatever that looks like. Even if you're a service provider, as part of your service, providing that service, you're going to have likely digital assets that are part of this, right? And so I know from when I first started, when I felt friction, when I felt like I wasn't having fun, it was a great time for me to just stop and reflect and ask why. Why did this feel like such a grind? Because if it was a topic that I was interested in, or because it was like in service of people that you care about, because we care about our clients. And I think that's when you're actually having fun doing it, that's energy that ends up showing up in other areas of your business too. So I think that's another reason why I love to see so many Hello Audio users creating audio-based content and actually having more energy and being able to create more and serve more. But it's not just about the volume of content or the ease of content. It's because their energy ends up showing up in different places. Whereas I think other things, we've all done things we don't love in business or like things that maybe zapped our energy a bit, but that does affect other areas of the business too. And it sounds like, your ability to scale to the size you have to serve as many people that, as you have in your program and to work with, you've scaled your sales team, you're scaling your internal team, like all of that takes energy. And that's something that I think is just something I wanted to bring up because that's really, really important. And a lot of people don't think about that.
My favorite part of the day is the first 2 hours of the morning, no sales calls, no team meetings. And usually I'm recording content. It's like, that's my playtime. That's my fun time.
I rarely hear that in this space, right? Like you always see people be like, how do I show up on social media? I need to be everywhere. Like, I just need to create content. I thought I love it. Why do I hate it? You know what I mean? And like, you're basically being like, hey, it might be the medium. It might be you don't want to write the content or show up on.
Well, yeah, I do 3 video reels for the socials too. And that's stressful. And
that's
I don't
the harder
like
part.
it.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. Like sitting down with my coffee and either planning, a lesson that I'm going to record, a podcast, or just doing my coffee with Colleen, which is unscripted. It is truly, that's why I get up in the morning, is to do that sort of thing. And then I just do the rest of it because I have to.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think the capacity piece, right? You have capacity for a couple videos that kind of stress you out because your business has created this space and you charge yourself up with the good stuff in the morning, right? You hit that first. Is your Coffee with Colleen the public podcast or is it also a private podcast?
No, I also have a public podcast that I publish 3 a week. But what I did, I just bumped into the top 1% because I was publishing 1 a week, right? And that's a lot. And I'm doing interviews and I got my intro and I'm following the framework and all the things. And it's not the same as just producing for my private stuff, right? So it's a bigger production. Then I realized, knock, knock, you have 120 private episodes sitting in files. So now we've ramped up to 3 episodes a week. And I just published 2 of my Coffee with Colleen's, and it's going to make me very mad and it's going to be fine. When those start doing better than the episodes with my interviews and I'm trying to work harder, then of course, then I'm prepared for that. But like right now, my Tuesday, my big one still does better, but it literally tripled my numbers.
Oh, I bet.
My downloads every.
This is what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
I've talked to a lot of other podcasters too, and that's why you see a lot of the people doing either it's a mini-sode or they're doing like
I call them mini-sodes.
So, okay, guys, this is another nugget, man. This is an episode
this
that
is full of it.
Literally covered every like topic that we talk about on the show. But the idea that you could use your private podcast and add it to a public feed, we've had other users talk about that. Like they'll do a case study that was in a private podcast and they're like, oh, I should just throw that in my public. So the idea that they can talk to each other and be used across, huge.
10 to 15 minute episodes that are just me talking. So my public audience is now also getting to experience me in that private way. And all I did was record an intro, I tell them this is content in my program. So it's a little bit of a teaser for that. This is my Coffee with Colleen. And if you're wanting to join the program, and then at the end, I do a call to book a call or get my private podcast, How to Reduce Your Drinking by 80%. So I'm pushing it on both ends. But yeah, it was like the biggest weight off my shoulder to realize I've got all this content sitting there. And like my VA just does all of it. Here's your outro and your intro. And I'm stocked up for a year. I don't even have to do anything. It's amazing.
Love it.
Feels so good when all that's done.
You are a smart cookie.
All without coffee.
All without coffee. There
Can you imagine me on coffee? I mean, can you see it?
In your Coffee with Colleen.
Yeah, it's decaf. Trust me, everybody's better for that. That's the core order right there. Please.
Too good.
I have one question I wanted to ask, because you also, with all these private podcasts, and I know not everyone is familiar, and you've got your tech calls and you're getting people set up. I'm curious what your client success rates, like the impact to those, and if you've gotten any specific feedback from clients about private podcasts, especially if maybe they were familiar with them before, or, I mean, I'm sure in your space, this isn't like the first thing that people have tried. So I'm curious how delivering content this way might also impact their ability to like follow through or to stick with things. Or, I mean, it's a combination clearly of your approach and your content. And I'm wondering if the medium has any effect on them as well.
Well, to answer it with a number, we have a 95% satisfaction rate in that, because I do a money back guarantee, and it's not based on your drinking. It's based on, are you satisfied with the program? I have a 95% satisfaction. And it's probably higher than that. I'm probably rounding down. Out of, 200 clients, I've only given about 5 refunds. So I don't even know what that is.
Wow.
So that's probably about 95%. So I just did my first in-person retreat, and we are building out year 2. So the retreat was women that have been with me up to a year. And now what does it look like? And in our program, we all know that you really don't know something until you teach it, till you show someone. So we're building out year 2 to be mentorship and, working on other things, not your drinking problem, but emotional sobriety applied to parenting and starting a business and all these things. So to have 16 women in a room who are always referring to things I've said, and I don't even remember saying it, and they're addicted. They say my podcasts are there, like, please, they can't wait till my new Coffee with Colleen comes out, especially the ones that have been in a while. So their experience of my program is like nothing I could have even hoped for. It's that breathtaking. I just spent, 3 days with all of them, and they absolutely love the podcast. And before, when I was delivering, video replays and doing video lessons, they might listen to something, half of it, maybe, if they're at their desk. And now they're listening 2, 3, 4 times. Like, they have favorite episodes. Like, what? You're listening to it more than once? So yes, I think that whoever said that and got my attention and said, this is how you build a cult following, we're literally getting matching tattoos. After this last retreat, my clients want to get matching tattoos. So all I'm saying is it's working.
When's your book coming out?
I don't have time for that right now.
Hey, you got to check out the episode where she wrote a book using her
audio private podcast.
I would think you can
this is my book right now.
This is my book. That's what I'm saying.
But if matching
to an editor,
if matching tattoos answers your question, if not, 95% satisfaction rate does.
That's a pretty good testimonial. Like, our marker isn't just like, do they stick around? It's like, are they getting a tattoo of your content or of you?
Yeah.
Too good.
Oh my goodness. There's been so many nuggets that we've dropped in this episode.
I'm like, these are all separate episodes. What is happening?
Yeah. I hope everyone was taking notes that was listening, or else listen to it again, which you can. And the fact that you have people, because Lindsay, we talk about repetition and how easy it is, and we don't ever watch the video replays either at all, which I feel bad sometimes about, but audio makes it so much easier. And the fact that you have people re-listening to episodes to the fact where they can quote them or remember them, or it makes, that's huge. Mm-hmm. It's a really, really big deal.
They listen to themselves get coached, the audio replays that they got coached, or they'll say, did you hear so-and-so share? And they'll go find it. It is so magical. It's not even on the same level. Like, I don't think we're talking about video courses, video delivery in, the online learning, like, my whole program is Hello Audio, and we're on Discord. There's no website. You don't have to log into nothing. And it is magical. Like, the community is magical. So
I'm so glad we're doing this meeting now as we head into, we have our Q2 planning meeting. I call it a meeting. It's like we just got.
Yeah.
This was a meeting, Colleen, of you giving us stuff that we should do with Hello Audio, like where, this is some deep insight. But yeah, we're heading into a Q2 planning meeting. Is it next week? I can't remember. I think it's next week. And I'm just like, my mind is going. And I also have some other like insights from other people that I'm just like, okay, I think we're reaching an interesting point in Hello Audio's history. Anyways, this has been such a fun conversation. I mean, we really talked about everything. I think you have a feed in every type of feed that we tell people they could have, like better than us even, which you shouldn't be surprised. But is there any feed you haven't created yet that you're like, okay, I need to do this type of feed next? Is there one you're sitting on?
No, but I will tell you what would be really nice, and someday with the tech is if we could share, like, somebody needs to listen to something, they get on a call and I'm having this trouble, and one of my gals is like, okay, you need to listen to episode 52 in feed 7C, whatever. If we could have shareable links, and I understand that's not a thing, everybody's got unique links, but that's the one thing, because like on my public podcast, I can send you a link to my episode, but that's the one thing, aside from improving search function, but that's so much part of the platforms that they're hosted on. It's not Hello Audio per se, but shareable links would be a way to share the links. Like a magic wand, please. I know it doesn't sound possible, but neither did a lot of things. And here we are. So
the good news is that does kind of exist, but it doesn't tie back to their unique link. Like, you can share a link to, like, it would be the universal, essentially the universal feed.
Yeah.
So that you won't necessarily know.
And what we did, we moved against that because we want to drive the behavior to build the comfort of finding it in their own feed. Like my course content feed, we do seasons. Seasons. So there's seasons edition for my course content. So you can get it laid out like 1 to 800 episodes, or you can get it divided into seasons. But we want, especially in the early days, this first 6 weeks of onboarding, we want to train them to be able to find what they're looking for. And if that to me, for existing clients, that gets them more confused. Like, well, where's the link for that? Because you'd be surprised, people are not paying attention. And so for an internal use, like, that's great for external use, but internally, we don't want to do that because people get confused.
Yeah, you're trying to establish the behavior too. Yeah. And that's the one thing I think about private podcasts. And we intentionally allowed, it's like, use your favorite app, like where they're already at. And we intentionally didn't start by building an app. If we had an app, it would be easier to control. But because everyone is using a dozen different apps, that does make it a little bit more challenging, because every app, like, dear Lord, like every app changes, how
it's
they
some now
Apple, some don't.
Apple's kind of blocking analytics, so like we basically have 3 things. If they subscribed or invited, then if there's a 0 or a 1, You know, if there is a number these days, I kind of get surprised because we recommend Apple so much, but anybody with an Apple doesn't usually go over 1, but it's still information. But yeah, I don't know.
Something's working. So there's that.
A private app would be fine with me.
Good to know. Well, this is fun. We got to do more of these live. We need feedback on the podcast episodes. So this has been fantastic. What a pleasure to have you on. Love talking to people who just get what we created and you're just like, yes. It's funny because I think when we created it, we didn't realize that it would become this. But now that it's become this, I'm like, oh, this was always what it was supposed to be.
We can get matching tattoos if you want. I'm in.
Yes. Okay, perfect. We're getting matching tattoos. Cool. This has been super fun. Well, thank you for sharing everything, taking us behind the curtain of all the goodness you have going on. Please keep us posted. If you have any other, because you're pushing the envelope with like innovative ways of using this. And I think this is going to be, as we talk about shareable episodes, this is going to be one we are going to reference a lot, I have a feeling. So thank you for doing that for us because
I'm happy
this
to.
means the world. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever need, like, we know that the techie stuff, you know, that doesn't go well, like we have somebody that can reset the feed for him. Like that tech call, that's one of the most valuable. Anybody that can do that needs to do that because sometimes people get locked out of the feed.
Sure.
You know, we have Diana. I'm locked out of the feed again. I'm like, what are you doing with your feeds? Like, how is this happening? But now it's a button. And I think my son's automated. He's my tech guy. He's automated the reset so that it just happens. So like they submit a ticket, it generates a new link.
I can see that happening.
Deletes their old stuff.
We should definitely do that.
But he created that. So it like deletes them, re-enters them, sends them a new link. And it just all is I don't even know how he does that.
Right.
But so we're creating solutions for it to make it easier, but it's good.
That was super great. Okay. Fantastic.
Okay. Well, it's an honor. I mean, I wouldn't have the business I have without you guys.
Oh,
so
that means a lot.
Legit, straight up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nora, do you want to ask our final question?
I would love to. So this is a question we ask all of our guests here. If there was a private podcast with your life's musings, what would it be called?
An autobiography. What not to do.
Oh, nice.
Perfect. I was like, it can't be Coffee with Colleen.
An autobiography. What not to do.
What not to do. I love it. I wish I would have had that one when I was like, I don't know, 18. I feel like that would have been a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but we learned from it. That's how we got here, right?
Yeah. Or, hey, this will be fun.
Yeah.
That's another one.
With that face on the cover.
Yeah. Hold my beer.
I just want to sign. Can I get Coffee with Colleen? I think I need it.
If you want, you let me know. I'll send you a link. Mm-hmm. It's so good too. It's fun. It's such a fun feed. It really is a joy. I just sit around and say shit like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm here for this. Okay.
My happy hangover story was last week. And I come up with my best stuff, like how I come up with it. My happy hangover story.
Love it.
Too fun. All right, my dear. Well, we will have you on. I have a feeling you're going to be a repeat guest. So hit us up.
Yeah, when I hit 10 million, you guys can have me back. All right.
Awesome. Take care.
All right. See ya.
And there you have it, audio heads. Another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast is in the books. I hope you're leaving today feeling even more ready to amplify your voice and connect with your audience in meaningful ways. The adventure continues in our next episode with even more insights, strategies, and inspiration to help you along your own private podcasting journey. Of course, make sure to check out helloaudio.fm to start your own private podcast. And remember, you've got amazing content that needs to be heard. So let's turn the volume up. Until next time.